Welcome to the Women in Wealth podcast, brought to you by Regina McCann-Hess, a certified financial planner with over 2 decades of experience. This show is for professional women who want guidance in working towards their retirement vision in learning, building, planning, striving for your dreams, and putting the work in now so that you can pursue your financial independence.
Oh my gosh, have you heard about that big IPO and other ones coming? What should you do? Are you going to get left behind if you don't participate? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hello, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management. And unless you've been under a rock or an isolated island somewhere, there's been the big hubbub about the SpaceX IPO. And I will even say that is probably the biggest IPO that I remember in my history of being in the finance world, but it's definitely one of the largest ever, raising, or I'd say a valuation around time of IPO of about $2 trillion. That's T like Tom trillion. I don't even know, like, if you put that in $100 bills, how much space that would take up. It's funny money at that point, right? But anyway, I mean, everyone was talking about this. Everyone was interested. I got calls from people I never thought I would get calls from, anywhere from like in their 20s to their 80s. I mean, these were great conversations. But it's exciting. You get pulled into the excitement of it. But you also like, that doesn't mean because it's exciting and everybody's talking about it doesn't mean that it's right for you, right? So you have to like have those conversations about, is this right for my portfolio? Is this in line with my risk tolerance or my investment objectives? All those boring things that us financial advisors talk to you about all the time, and they get thrown to the wind when something this exciting happens. But it is something that's happening, and there's a lot of people asking, like, well, what if I don't participate? Am I going to miss out? Is it something that I'm never going to see again, and I'm going to be left behind in the dust if I don't participate? What if everyone else sees something I don't? I mean, these are all human reactions, human responses. But this is also where it gets a little complicated because there becomes this urgency to participate. And we saw that right afterwards. The stock spiked up to crazy numbers, which, for something that big, that big of an impact or that big of a national story, you would expect it to have, some excitement with the stock price. However, it also has come back down too. So that's the other side of the story that you have to keep in mind when you're dealing with something like an IPO. An IPO, by the way, stands for initial public offering. That is when the company is putting their stock out there for the first time. And a lot of people can make money on it. I mean, it doesn't mean it's always going to make money, but the companies or the employees, whoever's involved, and the people who get those shares tend to be happy for at least a little bit of time. Again, we don't know how long that mood lasts. So it is something that everyone's been talking about, but you do want to slow down before putting money into an individual stock, an IPO, anything like that, just to make sure, does it fall in line with your current investment strategy? Do you care about that risk? Is it in line with your risk? All those boring things that we talk about at your strategy sessions. So what could happen to me if I change my mind? It's like not in my bailiwick, or it is in my bailiwick. And if you answer the question, what could happen for you to change your mind? If the answer is really nothing, then it might be worth taking a pause and deciding whether or not you really want to participate in this. Now, we're talking about, like, I'm mentioning SpaceX, right? But there are other IPOs that are coming out, especially AI-related IPOs that are coming out soon. So you might see the same excitement around them as well. So that's why we're gonna focus on the SpaceX one. Now, some of those other AI type IPOs that could be coming down the pike are OpenAI and Anthropic, and they've both filed their own IPOs. So we're talking about SpaceX, but the same conversation could be placed when those come live as well. So, these are just things to think about. Like again, it could be exciting, it could be fun, but you do have to think about, does it make sense for you? And would I still want this if no one was talking about it or everybody wasn't talking as much about it? It didn't make front page headlines every day for several days or weeks at this time. If the headlines didn't create the attention, would I still be interested in it? So again, what's your real reason for buying it? If you're buying, obviously you're not buying it as an IPO right now because that ship has sailed, but you could be thinking, oh, should I still buy it on the secondary market? So you want to think about those questions. And then the other thing, like, right now we're all excited, it's space, it's all the shiny object syndrome type of thing. But it doesn't mean that it's going to go up all the time. So the next question you have to ask yourself is, how would I feel if the stock dropped by 50% or 40% or 60%, whatever the number is, 10%? How am I going to feel when my $50,000 becomes $25,000 if it drops by 50%? Those are, what's your reaction going to be to something like that? Those are questions you do have to ask yourself before buy a company that is still, in the early stages of having a stock market track record. The other thing a question that you could ask is, what job would this investment do in my portfolio? What's the purpose of the holding? Why, if somebody asks you why you own it, could you answer that in one sentence other than like, hey, everybody else has it, so I have to have it, which is an answer, right? But it's also, you don't want it to be speculation, like I'm gold mining, like I'm going out in the Wild West because I heard there's gold out there. So you do want to just be careful getting caught up in the hype. That's all. Another question you can ask yourself is, what am I giving up to make room for this? Do I have to sell something or do I have to pull money from another account? Am I pulling money from one of my cash reserve accounts? And if I do I have enough of an emergency fund in case something happens while I'm waiting for this investment to take roots and grow? And can I pull my cash flow needs from somewhere else in case I have an emergency? You do want to make sure the trade-off makes sense. And you also want to make sure that if it's pulling away from your other priorities, you have kind of thought about that and how that's going to impact you moving forward. And you could choose to move forward, you could choose not to move forward. Both are decisions. It doesn't have to be, you can take action or not take action or take inaction. But again, talk about, does it fit your current strategy? Having that conversation within your full financial picture could help. The other impact that we're going to talk about today, and again, like I said, there's other IPOs coming out. Also, the IPO market you're going to see that I'm talking about, where the hype is going to be, is mostly surrounding the AI type stocks. So this is why we just kind of want to talk about it and get some thought patterns around it. The other thing that's impacting, at least it impacted for SpaceX, is that your retirement savings could be impacted by this. So if you don't buy it in your own stock account, but you own index funds in your 401k, at some point you could own SpaceX indirectly. So what do I mean by that? Right now, SpaceX is already in the Russell and the NASDAQ. There was a very brief waiting period. NASDAQ and both waived their normal time frame and testing and all that fun stuff. NASDAQ only made SpaceX wait 15 days. Russell was after 5 days of trading. So that was like really, really quick. So that is something that if you have access to the Russell or the NASDAQ indexes in your 401k plan, you could have exposure there. Now, it's not a huge exposure because those indices or index funds are usually a very small part of retirement plans. The bigger index that's used very, very widely, and I would say maybe 85% of the time, is the S&P 500. So everybody, whenever you hear the market's going up, the market's going down, most people are referring to the S&P 500 because that's what a lot of people own, especially in their 401k plans. Well, good news there is that S&P is not waiving their 12-month standard waiting period to add a new company to their index. They are still going to have their profitability test, and there are trillions. You remember that big T word, lots and lots of dollars, trillions of dollars in the S&P 500 index funds and ETFs, index ETFs within 401k plans. So this time next year, SpaceX could be a much larger portion of your 401k plan going forward if you have picked a certain percentage of your 401k plan to be in the S&P 500. So right now you can limit that exposure because if you're in the S&P 500 in your 401k plan, it does not have any SpaceX in it. But if you have money in NASDAQ and Russell, it will have a very small portion. And the reason I say small portion, it's because the Nasdaq and the Russell have a very small weighting inside of retirement plans. Nasdaq represents less than 1%. I mean, that's how small it is in the 401k market because the 401k market is huge. It's a lot of money Americans have in their 401k plans. And then Nasdaq, Russell would have maybe, around 10-15% of it because it just depends where the S&P winds up. I think it's like 80 to 85. So, you do the math. If it's not exact, it's okay. This is just a theoretical conversation. So if you do have those indices in your 401k plan, you do have some exposure, but it's not a heavy portion of 401k plans right now. So if you're thinking, oh, well, I didn't buy it individually, but I do want some exposure, then you can look at your 401k plan and say, oh, well, they have the NASDAQ or the Russell index, maybe I'll put a little bit here. Or I really don't want any part of that. Just again, depends on your risk parameters. I'm going to make sure I keep to the S&P 500 for at least this year. And then next year I'll reevaluate when the SpaceX or when the S&P 500 index allows SpaceX into their indice. And obviously that's a year from now, so a lot of things could happen between now and then to see what would happen with them getting into the S&P 500. So those are the up-to-date conversations that we're having around SpaceX, around these AI type of IPOs, and obviously, are they appropriate for you? And then how are they impacting your retirement accounts at work through your 401k plans, 403b plans, whatever alphabet soup you have for your retirement plans at work. So, you want to just kind of pay attention to that. And again, you're going to hear more hype when the OpenAI and Anthropic IPOs come out. Will it be as crazy as SpaceX? I don't know. SpaceX was pretty big. Will it be as big? Maybe not, but it's still going to have a lot of hype, a lot of excitement around it because everywhere you go, no matter what industry you're in, we're all talking about AI, how it's impacting this, how it's impacting that. And, it's part of our future, whether we like it or not. And you do have to keep up because as a Gen Xer, I realize that the younger generation is much better equipped with technology because they grew up with it, like literally came out with their hand, with it in their hands, right? That's how we feel. So for AI and all the technology, I'm constantly trying and striving to keep up because I feel like if I don't, I'm going to be left in the dust. Like, right? You have to constantly learn these things and try to keep up. But in addition to that, how are they impacting? How's AI impacting now your stock market portfolio or your retirement plan portfolio or your job? A lot of people are worried about how it's going to impact their jobs. I have that conversation, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a week at least with everyone, not just clients and people in my industry. Like everyone I talk to, we talk about it. It's like the topic du jour. But it's not anything to panic about, right? Stick with your diversified plan, keep your long-term goals in focus. And also remember, like, with every shift, like the Industrial Revolution and, the car, Ford made the Model T, there's an adjustment period, right? And some jobs do go away, but other jobs come into play. New jobs will be created. Some jobs might be done away with, for lack of a better term, but other jobs will be created, from my lips to God's ears, right? Hopefully that is the same case here. So that's why we're going to address it here and there. If I keep getting questions about it, we'll pop in and do another podcast about it. But for now, I appreciate you, spending some time with me. Again, I'm Regina McCann-Hess, president of Forge Wealth Management, and my website is forgewealth.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Forge Wealth, and LinkedIn. I'm Regina McCann-Hess. Go make it a great day.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Women in Wealth podcast. You can watch the founder's video I created for you to learn more about me and how I can guide you towards your financial independence at www.forgewealth.com. The information in this podcast is educational and general in nature and does not take into consideration the listener's personal circumstances. Therefore, it is not intended to be a substitute for specific, individualized financial, legal, or tax advice. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a final decision. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, and SIPC. Investment advice offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Forge Wealth Management are separate entities from the LPL Financial. Our show guests and their companies are not affiliated with nor endorsed by LPL Financial, Private Advisor Group, or Forge Wealth Management.